Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Shahar Zara. I hope you all are safe and fine. Today our topic of discussion is basically the continuity of our previous lecture that was about transcriptomics. So before we start our today's topic, let's take a brief overview of the things that we have discussed in our previous lecture. So in our last lecture we discussed the history, how the first human transcriptome it was developed and it was published in 1991, and then the other two human transcriptomes they were also published in 2008. Then we discussed what were the things or the techniques that were being used before transcriptomics. Then we discussed that how this transcriptomics field it came into existence and it evolved over the period of time, and lastly we discussed the contemporary techniques, and then we discussed that how the data that is generated from the RNA transcript it can be achieved, and we discussed the method of these data gathering. And the first we discussed that first we have to do the isolation of the RNA, then we discussed the EST, and now in today's lecture we will discuss the serial and cap analysis of gene expression, that is your SAGE, or you can say CAGE, because cap serial analysis of gene expression, or you can say cap analysis of gene expression. So SAGE it was development of the EST methodology, and we have discussed the EST methodology in the previous lecture, and it was developed to increase the throughput of the tags data generated, and it allows some quantitation of the transcript abundance. Throughput, I have told you in the previous lecture the meaning of this throughput, so here I will repeat. Throughput means the amount of the material or items passing through a system or the process. So this basically SAGE was developed to increase the amount of the tags generated. So what happened in this technique is that the complementary DNA it is generated from the RNA, but then it is digested into 11 base pair tag fragments, and this is done by using restriction enzymes. And these restriction enzymes actually what they do is that they cut that specific sequence and 11 base pairs along from that sequence, means they will give you a fragment of 11 base pairs. Then these complementary DNA tags they are then concatenated head to tail into long strands, and they are sequenced using low throughput, but for them they are sequenced using low throughput, quantity will be less, but methods that are used they basically read long length sequences, and they are Sanger sequencing. So what happens is that once the sequences are deconvoluted into the original 11 base pair tags, then the reference genome, if the reference genome is available, these tags can be aligned to identify their corresponding gene. And for example, if the reference genome is absent or it is unavailable, the tag they can simply be directly used as diagnostic markers, because if they found to be differently expressed in the disease state. So how this is SAGE work, and in the next slide we will see how this diagrammatically that how this SAGE is being performed. So here you can see the diagram of the SAGE. It is basically the summary of how this SAGE is being performed. So what happens is that in the red portion you can see what will happen is that within the organism you know that genes are transcribed and they are spliced in the eukaryotes to produce some mature messenger RNA transcript. So here in the red diagram it is being shown that the transcription and then after that the splicing takes place and the mature messenger RNA they are being produced. Then what happens is that the messenger RNA it is extracted from the organism, and we have studied that how the RNA it can be separated in the previous lecture. And then the reverse transcriptase, after the extraction of the RNA, messenger RNA, reverse transcriptase is used to copy the messenger RNA into stable double-stranded complementary DNA, and this entire process is shown you in the blue one, in the blue portion. In SAGE, the double-stranded complementary DNA it is digested by the restriction enzymes, and it is done so, this restriction size, as we have discussed in the previous slide, it is done so in order to produce 11 nucleotide tag fragments. These tags are then concatenated and they are sequenced using long read Sanger sequencing. And here you can see in the blue portion different shades of blue are being shown. So these different shades basically of blue, they indicate tags from different genes. Lastly, what happens is that the sequences, they are deconvoluted and they are done so because in order to find the frequency of each tag, and the tag frequency, it can be used to report on transcription of the gene that the tag came from. So this is how the entire process of SAGE takes place, and it was the brief summary. Then you have CAGE, and CAGE SAGE is basically the variant of SAGE, and it is the abbreviation, as I have discussed before, it is the abbreviation of CAP, analysis of gene expression. And what happened is that the sequences stack from the 5' end of a messenger RNA transcript only. So only the 5' end of the messenger RNA transcript, it will be tagged. So what happened as a result of this, what happened is that the transcription start sites of the gene, they can be identified when the tags are aligned to the reference genome. We have discussed about the reference genome in the previous slide. And by identifying the gene start size, it is used basically for promoter analysis and for cloning of full-length complementary DNAs. So that's why this CAGE is important. SAGE and CAGE, these methods produce information on more genes than it was possible when sequencing with the EST, and EST we have discussed previously how this was done. And but here in these both processes, the sample preparation and the data analysis, they are typically more label intensive. So this was all about SAGE and CAGE. Then you have microarrays. Microarrays basically they consist of short nucleotide oligomers, and these oligomers are known as probes, and these probes, they are arrayed on a solid substrate, and this solid substrate can be a glass. In this process, in microarrays, transcript abundance, it is determined by the hybridization process, and hybridization of fluorescently labeled transcript takes place to the probes. So hybridization, what is the meaning of hybridization in molecular biology? Hybridization in molecular biology, it basically it's a phenomenon in which single stranded DNA or RNA molecules, they anneal to the complementary DNA or RNA. So this is the process of hybridization. Microarray, it basically requires some prior knowledge of the organism of interest, for example in the form of an annotated genome sequence or in a library of EST, so that it can be used to generate the probes from the array. Here I have used the word probe. So in molecular biology there is a hybridization probe, and this hybridization probe is basically a fragment of DNA and RNA which is of variable length, and these fragments of DNA or RNA, it can be radiatively labeled or fluorescently labeled. So these are the probes, and these probes they are basically useful in detecting the presence of nucleotide substances that are complementary to the sequence in the probe. Now we will understand through the diagram how this microarrays functions. So here is a summary of DNA microarrays, and what happens is that in the red portion you can see as we have discussed before that in the organism genes are transcribed and they are spliced, and it is done in order to produce mature messenger RNA transcript, which is shown you in the red portion. Then this messenger RNA, it is extracted from the organism, and the reverse transcriptase, it is used to copy the messenger RNA in stable double-stranded complementary DNA, and this entire process is shown in the blue portion. So in microarrays, this double-stranded complementary DNA, it is fragmented and it is fluorescently labeled. Fluorescently labeled orange. Fluorescent is basically orange, and you can see in the blue portion this label fragment is fluorescent label with that orange. The label fragment then it binds to an ordered array of complementary oligonucleotides, and measurement of fluorescent intensity across the array. What is do is that how much the intensity with which it will produce the fluorescent, it will indicate the abundance of predetermined set of sequences, and these sequences basically are typically specifically chosen to report on genes of interest within the organism genome. So this is how this microarrays, DNA microarrays, it functions. So let's discuss the methods. The manufacture of microarrays, it relies on micro and nano fabrication techniques. Microfabrication is basically the process of fabricating miniature structures of micrometer scales and even smaller than it. Whereas this nanofabrication, it is basically the design and manufacture of devices with dimensions made in nanometer, and nanometer, you know, it is basically the 10 to the power -9. Microarrays for transcriptomics, they typically fall into one of the two categories. The number one is your low density spotted arrays, and the second one is the high density short probe arrays. And the transcript presence, it can be recorded with single or dual channel detection of fluorescent tags. So this low density arrays, they basically measure in picoliter, and they typically feature picoliter drops of a range of purified complementary DNAs that are arrayed on the surface of glass slide, and these probes are longer than those of high density arrays, and they typically lack the transcript resolution of high density arrays. And the spotted arrays, they use different fluorophores for test and control samples, and the ratio of the fluorescence later on by the use of fluorophores, when the fluorescence is produced, and then this ratio of fluorescence, it is used to calculate a relative measure of the abundance. Whereas on the other hand, the high density arrays, we will discuss in the next slide. High density arrays, they use single channel detection, and each sample is hybridized and it is detected individually. And these high density arrays, they were popularized by the FX matrix gene chip array, in which each transcript was quantified by several short 25 mer probes that together as a one gene. Then you have Nibble-Gen arrays. Nibble-Gen arrays are high density arrays, and they are produced by maskless photochemistry method. And this maskless photochemistry method, it permits flexible manufacture of array in small or large numbers. These arrays have hundreds of thousands of 45 to 85 mer probes, and they are hybridized with a one color labeled sample for suppression analysis. And here the word mer is basically is used to denote the length of the oligonucleotide, and mer means parts. So here the mer, it denotes this. Then you have RNA sequencing, and RNA sequencing, it refers to the combination of high throughput sequencing methodology with the computational method. Why it is done, why this combination is made, it is done to capture and quantify transcripts that are present in an RNA extract. And by using this RNA sequencing, nucleotide sequences are generated that are typically around 100 base pair in length, but these sequencing can also range from 30 base pair to 10,000 base pair depending upon the sequencing method that is being used. And RNA sequencing, it leverages deep sampling of the transcriptome, and deep sampling basically it refers to the general concept of aiming for high number of unique reads of a region of a sequence. Means here you aim to identify and to read the unique sequence reads, or you can say the unique sequences. Moreover, in RNA sequencing, input RNA amounts, they are much lower for RNA sequencing, and they are basically nanogram quantity as compared to the microarrays, where there was microgram quantity, and it allows basically fine examination of the cellular structures down to the single cell level. And if we talk theoretically, then there is no upper limit of quantification in RNA sequencing, and the background signal, it is very low, 400 base pair reads in non-repetitive regions. So this is the principles and all the advances that are being done in this RNA sequencing. So in this diagram you can see the summary of RNA sequencing. The first two steps are same, in which the mature messenger RNA transcript is being produced, and then it is extracted from the organism. It is fragmented and then copied into the stable double-stranded DNA, complementary DNA. And this double-stranded complementary DNA, it is then sequenced using high throughput short read sequencing methods, and these sequencing, they can be aligned to be a reference genome sequence to reconstruct which genome regions were being transcribed. And these data which is obtained through this, it can be used to annotate where expressed genes are and their relative expression levels. It can be used to determine it and any alternative splice variants. So this is how this RNA sequencing is done. Now let's see the advantages of this RNA sequencing and why we use it. RNA sequencing, it is used to identify genes within the genome, or it is also used to identify which genes are active at a particular point in time. And read counts can be used to accurately model the relative gene expression level. RNA sequencing methodology, it has constantly improved over time, and this improvement has primarily been made through the development of DNA sequencing technologies in order to increase the throughput, accuracy and read length. And moreover, RNA sequencing, it has been rapidly adopted and it has overtook microarrays as the dominant transcriptomics technique in 2015. And for the first time, RNA sequencing descriptions were published in 2006 and 2008. Moreover, the quest for the transcriptome data at the level of individual cells, it has driven advances in RNA sequencing library preparation methods, and as a result of it, dramatic advances in sensitivity has been produced. Single cell transcriptomes, they are now well described, and they have been even extended to in situ RNA sequencing, where transcriptomes of the individual cells, they are directly interrogated in fixed tissues. So you have seen that how this RNA sequencing has took over the microarrays, and now more advances and the more developments are being done in this technology. So now let's discuss the methodology of this RNA sequencing. And this RNA sequencing, it has developed together with the rapid development of the high throughput DNA sequencing technology. However, before the extracted RNA transcripts, they are sequenced, several key processing steps they are performed, and methods for this purpose, it differs in the use of transcript arrangement, fragmentation, amplification, single or paired end sequencing, and whether to preserve strand information or not. So in these things, this methodology, it differs. Moreover, the sensitivity of RNA sequencing experiment, it can be increased by enriching classes of RNA that are of interest, means that you are working on, and by depleting known abundant RNAs. The messenger RNA molecules, they can be separated by using oligonucleotide probes, and these oligonucleotide probes, what they do is that they bind their poly A tails, and alternatively ribodepletion, it can be used to specifically remove abundant but uninformative ribosomal RNAs by hybridization to probes that are tailored to the taxon specific RNA sequencings. And this taxon specific RNA sequencing means they are, for example, taxon, you know what the taxon mean is. Taxon is basically the plural form of taxa, singular form of taxa, and plural is taxa, and it is basically a group of one or more population of an organism or organisms seen by the taxonomist to form a unit. So here the ribosomal RNA sequencings, they are basically used that represents the specific taxa, means mammal ribosomal RNAs or the plant ribosomal RNAs. Then there are some small RNAs that are known as microRNAs, and these microRNAs, they can be purified based on their size by gel electrophoresis and the extraction. And because messenger RNAs, they are longer than the read lengths of typical high throughput sequencing method, transcript, they are usually fragmented prior to the sequencing, so we shorten their length. And the fragmentation method, it is basically the key aspect of sequencing library construction, and what it do is that it may incorporate chemical hydrolysis, nebulization, or the sonication of RNA, or it may utilize simultaneous fragmentation and tagging of complementary DNA by transposase enzyme. During preparation for sequencing, complementary DNA copies of transcript, they may be amplified by using the PCR, and this is done in order to enrich for fragments that contain the expected 5' and the 3' adapter sequences. And amplification, it is also used to allow sequencing of very low input amounts of RNA, and this input amount of RNA can be as low as 50 pg in stream applications. Here pg stands for petagram, that is your 10 power 15. And spike in controls, it can be used to provide quality control assessment of library preparation and sequencing, and in terms of guanine cytosine content, fragment lengths, and as well as the bias due to fragment position within the transcript. Then there are unique molecular identifiers, and these unique molecular identifiers, they are short random sequencing that are used to individually tag sequence fragments during library preparation, so that every tag fragment is unique. So what UMI do is that it provides an absolute scale for quantification and the opportunity to correct for subsequent amplification bias that is introduced during library construction, and it accurately estimates the initial sample size. UMI, they are particularly well suited to single cell RNA sequencing transcriptomics, in which the amount of input RNA it is restricted, and you can say it is extended amplification of the sample is required. So that's why UMI are used. So once the transcript molecules they have been prepared, they can be sequenced in just one direction, that is your single end, or both direction, that is your pair end. Single end sequence, it is usually quicker to produce, cheaper than pair end sequencing, and sufficient for quantification of gene expression levels. Whereas on the other hand, pair end sequencing, it produces more robust alignments, or you can say assemblies, which is beneficial for gene annotation and transcript isoform discovery. Here I have used the word gene annotation. Gene annotation or the genome annotation is basically the process of identifying the location of genes and all of the coding regions in the genome, and determining what those genes do. So this is basically the process of gene annotation. Then you have strand specific RNA sequencing method. So the strand specific RNA sequencing method, they preserve the strand information of the sequence transcript, and without strand information, reads can be aligned to a gene locus, but they do not inform in which direction the gene is transcribed. Standard RNA DNA sequence, it is useful for determining transcription for genes that overlap in different directions, and it is useful to make more robust gene predictions in non-model organisms. Currently, RNA sequencing, it relies on copying of RNA molecule into complementary DNA molecules prior to the sequencing. And as a result of this, the development of DNA sequencing technologies has been defining features for the RNA sequencing. And then there is the nanopore sequencing. Nanopore direct sequencing, it's basically the direct sequencing of RNA is done through this nanopore sequencing, which represents a current state of the RNA sequencing technique. And nanopore sequencing, it was basically established in 2016. The sensitivity and accuracy of an RNA sequencing experiment, they are dependent on the number of reads obtained from each sample, and a large number of reads are needed to ensure sufficient coverage of the transcriptome, and it enables detection of low abundance transcript. Experimental design, it is further complicated by sequencing technologies with a limited output range, because as the technology advancements are taking place, so sequencing technologies are also being improved. So these sequencing technologies now, they are variable efficiency of sequence creation and variable sequence quality. These are the some of the attributes of these sequence technologies. Moreover, as you know that every species has a different number of genes, and therefore it requires a tailored sequence. Because of these different number of genes, every species requires a tailored sequence yield for an effective transcriptome. And early studies, it determined suitable thresholds empirically, but as the technology matures, suitable coverage is predicted computationally by transcriptome saturation. As I have told you that previously the thresholds were determined empirically, but now they are done computationally. So the ENCODE, that is Encyclopedia of DNA Element project, they have recommended the benchmark. Current benchmark is for 70-fold exome coverage for standard RNA sequence and up to 500-fold exome coverage to detect rare transcript and isoforms. So this was the entire process of RNA sequencing, and how this entire process takes place, and we have discussed it thoroughly. I hope you have understand what we have discussed so far, and if you want to read this in the written form which I have discussed here, then you can visit these sites. Thank you for watching.